Right. Thank you for joining me today, fam, for Charlotte in the Know. I'm your host, Adrian Biddle. I always stand thirsty for knowledge and keeping Charlotte in the know. Let me give thanks to my sponsor, Urban Times, bringing the positive side to media. You can check Urban Times out at urbantmedia.com, Facebook at Urban T Mag, Twitter at Urban T Mag, YouTube, Urban Times Media, email urbantimes@hotmail.com. If you would like to also advertise your business and get your business in the know, contact me at charlotteintheknow@gmail.com. Today I am being joined by Oliver Merino of Comunidad Colectiva. Thank you for joining me today, Oliver.
Thank you for having me.
Oliver, if you wouldn't mind, could you actually tell the listeners what the Comunidad Colectiva represents?
Sure. So the English translation would be Community Collective, and it's a community organization. It's just a group of people, concerned community members. This group formed immediately after the election results in 2016, when I think a lot of people, not only immigrants, but people across the country were surprised by the results and also concerned about what was going to happen next, seeing that, the kind of rhetoric that we were hearing during the campaign and how that was going to translate into action by the new president. We formed, as I said, right after, and we came together to figure out ways to protect the people here in Charlotte and the surrounding area, knowing that with this new administration, we were gonna face some obstacles, and so we wanted to get people that were already organizing in Charlotte, that had organized before, and people that were new to this movement to figure out ways to protect one another.
Great. Now, the organization just recently had a demonstration and rally, May the 1st, if I'm correct. What focus were you actually trying to bring to the community?
Yeah, so May 1st, of course, is historically known as a day where we celebrate workers and their contributions to the country and to the world. And so there was a national call to have rallies, places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, major cities across the country that had rallies to uplift not only workers but also immigrants as well. We know that these new administration policies are not only targeting immigrants but are targeting people of color, people that may be different, and so we wanted to hold a rally here in Charlotte. To uplift immigrants, but also to put pressure on our local elected officials to do more. We haven't really gotten a lot of response from them. I think HB2 changed a lot of things for Charlotte. Local elected officials are now concerned that somehow the legislature in Raleigh will defund them, or we take away funds from Charlotte if they somehow are seen to step out of the way.
Yes.
Or their lane. And so we want to put pressure on them to do more to protect immigrants in the city.
Actually, you were pretty much touching on one of my other questions, because I was reading on your Facebook page that you had been calling out, the organization had actually been calling out the mayor and county commissioners. So to this date, they haven't reached out in any kind of support to you?
No. So we work with the Southeast Asian Coalition, which is based here in Charlotte, and works with the Southeast Asian community. We have a large Southeast Asian immigrant population here in Charlotte.
Yes.
And also we're working with Alerta Migratoria, a group that formed a couple years ago in the Triangle area after a series of raids by immigration.
Yes.
And they do a lot of anti-deportation work in that area and across North Carolina. And we so after the election of President Trump, we heard cities and across the country, and mayors and state legislatures that said that we do not agree with his policies, and that we're going to do everything that we can to protect the people that are now living in our cities and in our state. even if that means going against President Trump and challenging his policies. We haven't heard that type of leadership from
Yes.
Charlotte, and I think Charlotte is it's a very blue city in a red state, right? A state that where Republicans control the House, the Senate, and up until recently the governor position. Now what we want is for the city really to assume that leadership and to use the power that they have to want to challenge these policies of President Trump, but also to figure out what ways can they use their power, their local power, and to make sure that people feel that this city is behind them, and it will protect them regardless of where they come from, and regardless of their immigration status.
Absolutely. I'm gonna read you something. I'm kind of curious about this because I've been hearing about this a lot in the news. Now, ICE, and for those who's not for certain what ICE means, it is the U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement, and it has been in the news a lot lately that they have been detaining undocumented immigrants. It had also been rumored that they are waiting as far as undocumented parents after they drop their children off at school and actually are detaining them. Now, I want to actually see if I can actually confirm rumor from myth. Have you heard in the community a lot of this going on?
Well, one thing to understand is that ICE is really, they say that they're doing one thing when in fact they're doing another.
Yes.
One thing that I would encourage people is not to take whatever they say, like on face value.
Yes, sir.
That they should challenge whatever information they hear from them, because if for many of us working on the ground, we know that even if they say that they are not stopping kids in the bus stops, we've had situations here in Charlotte where that happened, but specifically with unaccompanied minors that came from Central America, and many of them had relatives here in this country, and so they were sent to their relatives while their paperwork was being processed and while they were hearing their cases. We had many of them that came to Charlotte. One of them was detained at a bus stop here in Charlotte. This happened about a year, almost 2 years ago, but they say that they don't do that. But on the ground, we know that that's not true. We've had in February a series of raids here in Charlotte, where there was a leaked email by a principal of a CMS school that said that the kids saw on their way to school somebody being detained.
Wow.
And while it may not be on school premises, right, it's on the way to school, and kids react to this. Kids are kids. They don't really understand the complexities of laws.
Absolutely.
They understand that my mom or dad may be undocumented, and they're gonna take them away, right? Or my friend is undocumented, or his or her family is undocumented, and they might be taken away. And so, just like we really haven't heard any type of repudiation against this raids here in Charlotte by the city council or city hall, we really haven't heard that type of response from CMS. Many of these kids, after these raids, we had a march in February where we drew almost 8,000 people to Uptown, where they marched through the streets of Uptown. And kids in CMS schools also organized their own marches. They got out of school, they decided to leave and march and walk out, because they were experiencing these issues too, and whether they were undocumented or not, they knew people that were facing this in Charlotte.
Absolutely. So, and from what you've been saying, because you, like you said, you pretty much on the ground and are grassroots oriented. How have the immigration bill actually, in your opinion, actually impacted the community as far as it being passed and a lot of these things are being implemented today?
Yeah, so there's no like immigration bill that has passed in the Senate or the House, but the president issued a series of executive orders, and the Department of Homeland Security also issued a series of memos saying essentially that anybody that is undocumented is subject to deportation. We have 11.5 million people here in the United States who are undocumented. Many of them, almost half of them came here with a visa, and their visa expired or something happened with their visa. And then we have also families that have been here for a long time. They have U.S. citizen children, right? And we have people that they may have lost their status from one reason or another, whether that was an interaction with the police or some type of like history in their past. And so what we are, what we're living now is I think an unprecedented time, because before there were priorities, even though sometimes ICE did not really follow them, but there were at least on paper priorities where we can say this person does not pose a threat to national security. They have a family. They deserve to stay here. They've been living here for so many years. They have a reasonable reason to stay in this country. Now, with the new deportation priorities, anybody is subject to deportation, regardless of how long they've been here, their family ties, and so what we want is again to organize people locally to push against these policies that are not working for the immigrant community, and understanding too that this is beyond just the Latino community. We have people here in Charlotte who have been detained, and they are from Africa, from Europe, from Asia. What we want is to gather as much support and for people to understand and that these are people that are living in your neighborhoods, that are going to your schools, right? Your neighbors, your friends, and hopefully people understand that what is happening on the east side also impacts what is happening. It influences this community, and hopefully people will take notice.
Well, on my end, I say with some of these executive actions that are being pushed right now by him, as far as with immigration, it seems to lack a lot of common sense. It seems to not take in compassion as far as families being broken apart. As me as being a father, I can't even imagine having my family torn apart like that. And I know and have been hearing that there's a lot of good people who have been actually separated like this, and I just really find that unfathomable as far as how it's affecting the kids that's actually being left here and trying to find a suitable living arrangements or anyone who can actually look out for them during these times like that. And I'm glad that you're actually sitting down with us, actually giving us a bigger picture of it, because a lot of this stuff isn't being actually detailed in the news. So that's why I wanted to actually get some of this information out. How, as a community, can we actually support the cause that you're actually trying to provide on a grassroots level? Because there's a lot of people that have been talking about this and want to actually get involved.
Yeah. So one would be just to stay in touch about what we're doing. We have a Facebook page, as you mentioned. It's Comunidad Colectiva, and we've done marches, we've done rallies, we've gone to city council. What we want to do next too is to pressure, to keep the pressure on city council, but also move to the county commissioners, because they have the power in the county, right? And they can influence the sheriff to break from the 287G contract. For those that don't know what the 287G is, it's a contract by the sheriff department and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that says that anybody that comes into the jail gets asked where they're from, and if they are from somewhere else, then they take their fingerprints, and if they are undocumented, then they are immediately put in deportation process. Why we're fighting against that is that this program has deported thousands of people here in Mecklenburg County,
Yes.
and in Charlotte. During the presidency of Barack Obama, we had almost 3 million deportations. Uh, Oftentimes, you would hear the president say that we're deporting criminals, not families. But on the ground, we know that that wasn't true. We've had people here in Charlotte deported with the 287G contract in place for just not having a driver's license or driving with a broken tail light, and then they check into and they can prove their identity because they don't have the right to have a driver's license in the state of North Carolina if they're undocumented. If there's any type of altercation, oftentimes our community lives in places where they're over policed, right? And if somebody calls the cops, sometimes, the cops may say, well, let's just go downtown and we'll figure this out, right? And then once they're trying to prove somebody's identity and the person can't provide any type of proof of identity because they don't have a driver's license or they may not have a passport, then they are fingerprinted, and that's when they're put in the deportation process.
Wow.
So, a few years ago, Mecklenburg County decided that, the families that should not be detained just because of not having a driver's license, but we still don't have, as an undocumented community, we don't have still the opportunity to get a driver's license in the state of North Carolina. And so it's up to the discretion of the officer whether they're going to take this person to downtown and be fingerprinted and all of that. What we want is for this contract to end, because we already have a system to keep people accountable for whatever they did, right? So if there's a disturbance notice in an apartment complex and police come, right? How do we encourage CMS CMPD to de-escalate that situation instead of just arresting somebody, right? How do we make sure that if they are taken to jail and they are accused of a crime, that they can fight that process instead of getting deported right away or being put in deportation process right away? Because now with the new deportation priorities, anybody that is accused of a crime is subject to deportation, right? You are not given the opportunity to prove your innocence. And so we are living, as I said, in unprecedented time, because before, right, if you were convicted, there were more chances of you getting deported. But now, even if somebody accuses you of a crime, you are in danger of deportation. And so that's why what we're trying to do is for the sheriff's department to break this contract with ICE. And so what people can do is, if you have if you live in Mecklenburg County, to call your elected officials and to ask them, to encourage the sheriff to break this contract. Where do they stand in terms of immigration? What are they going to do specifically to protect immigrants in the city? I think that's a good way to get involved.
That's a very important and easy way to actually get involved and actually contacting your local elected representatives and actually inquiring about that, because that's why you put them in office, and they should also be held accountable for things of this nature. Oliver, I would like to thank you for taking the time out for joining me today, and actually this has been a very informative podcast, and like I said, I'd like to also thank my listeners as well for joining me, and please also stay in the know. And Oliver, again, I'll be following you, and I guarantee you a whole lot more people will be following you with this issue as well. So again, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for all that you do and for getting this information to the people. So thank you so much.
Certainly my pleasure. Thank you, Oliver.